Hello, and welcome to the Healthy is Happy podcast, the show that helps you get back to the basics of healthy and happy living. We're your hosts. I'm Nellie Ward.
And I'm Jennifer Maha. This podcast is the passion project of two friends who believe that healthy living is happy living. Always look for the good in others, never stop believing in the power of positivity, and think a little hard work goes a long way. To us, healthy living is simply a commitment to making daily choices that keep us on a healthy trajectory, both physically and mentally. We believe it's a lifelong journey, not a destination, and we like to be your co-host along this journey. Buckle up and stay hydrated. It's going to be an epic adventure. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Healthy is Happy podcast. I'll be one of your co-hosts today, Jennifer.
I'm Nellie.
And today we have Tommy Moffitt here. So Tommy is a well-known strength and conditioning coach with a pretty successful background. I think 20 years at LSU, some time at
22
years at LSU,
Yeah.
some time at Tennessee, some time at Miami. You've played a key role in multiple national championship teams. You've won Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year multiple times, right? Father of a lot of athletes, two of which have played at the collegiate level, right? All around impressive guy, right? Still physically
That's a
fit.
lot.
He's got quite the resume.
I mean, we have some more bullet points. And
you.
you're preparing to kick off a new project called the Moffitt Method, which
Yes,
is, we're going to
yes,
talk
I am.
about, I think, all of these things in
Good.
today's conversation. So I would like to start. My first question is, in reading your bio, I read that you started your coaching career as an assistant football coach at John Curtis. So tell us just a little bit about like how you landed in
Yeah.
that role and then transitioned on to just strength and conditioning.
Well, so initially my goal was to be only the strength coach, but I couldn't find one of those jobs. So, I guess the year was 1987 when I graduated from college. And so I immediately started looking for jobs. And most universities only had one strength coach if they had a strength coach. So I gave up that, and so I started looking for high school jobs, and I'd go all around the state of Tennessee. That's where I was from. And I'd call coaches up and set up interviews and meetings with them, and they just weren't interested in doing it. So I had a college roommate that was from New Orleans, and he played football at John Curtis.
Okay.
So after graduation, he went back to John Curtis and was coaching football. And he and I had been in touch throughout the whole process, and their strength coach at the time, because Curtis they were on their second strength coach. So they'd already had two guys, and one of them was leaving. And so it created a position there. And so I interviewed with Coach Curtis over the telephone. And at the time, I was actually working at a state park in Tennessee as a recreation director. So I was interviewing with JT, and after a couple of weeks, he just got tired of me calling because I kept calling, begging
That's
to
awesome.
get a job.
Yeah.
And so I guess it was like August 1st of 88. He called me finally and offered me the job. So that's how it all happened. So to be the strength coach, I had to be an assistant football coach. I was the head wrestling coach and
I
assistant
didn't know
track
that.
coach. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did a lot,
That's awesome.
but it was good. It gave me an opportunity to coach a lot of different athletes and a lot of different sports, and I did it for 6 years. So I think looking back over my time through all of the coaching that I did, I think that was probably the best thing that I did as a young coach, and that's take a job somewhere where there wasn't a lot of pressure to win. And I didn't have a lot of facilities, so I had to make
do.
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
to make do. And, when you're a high school coach, if you're a wrestler, it doesn't matter what it is. You have to coach what you have at your disposal.
Right.
Yep.
And you can't go out and cherry pick the best athletes in the country. So if you have a 5'8", 200-pound guard, you have to make him the very best
He can be.
5'8", 200-pound guard. So, yeah, it was a great opportunity, and I wouldn't take anything for the time that I spent there.
So I think what you just said was very compelling, is that when you're a high school coach, you have to work with what you have, right? And I teach a lot of creative classes, and I always tell my students, everyone thinks, well, if I had no parameters, I would be as great as ever. But you're not, right? So
Right.
putting yourself in a box like that, you probably learned a lot more about what worked and what didn't because like you're saying, it wasn't the best of the best. Like this is this kid. I have to accept who they are and where they are and move them to this other place.
Exactly.
So your methodologies and technologies had to get like dialed in a lot faster, I would assume.
Yes, spent lots of hours, and this is something that has kind of followed me throughout my career. Is I always looked at every athlete as if it were like a problem, like a not a negative, but like a math problem.
Let's find a solution.
Yeah.
Right. And so you would have to sit down with all your text and a pencil and a piece of paper and come up with a solution, to do whatever we had to do with that young man or that young lady to be the best that they could be. And so it was a really rewarding, and it was good also because, as a young coach, you're so driven and you're so anxious about, getting results right now. But with kids, you can't do that. You have to work at their pace. And although young kids adapt a lot quicker than adults, you still have to kind of take your time with them and mold them and bring them along slow.
And the amount of growth in a high school, a freshman to a senior, they're
season to
insane.
season. They're bigger,
exponential,
stronger, taller, and they don't know how to use their limbs anymore. Like I don't know how to do my legs. They're just
and so we had no control over what they ate, how often they slept, when they went home. And, we had a lot of, I guess you could say the socioeconomic level of the kids was better than normal, but there were a lot of variables that went into play that we had no control over.
Yeah.
And then you had multi-sport athletes as well. You had football. In fact, we had athletes, because Curtis is a small school, so we had athletes that played football, played basketball, played baseball, and then whenever they had an opportunity, they would play tennis and
run track probably.
Yeah, and they did all types of sports. We had guys that played 5 or 6 different sports.
Yeah, when you're a small school, you gotta
awesome.
make everybody a full-blown athlete.
Yeah.
Right.
You're coordinated. All right, buddy, you're doing it all.
Yeah. So it was fun. It was really rewarding.
So, take us through what was your next? Like, when did you decide to move on from that job? I mean, that was an early job, and not many people.
After about the second day.
Like, okay.
No, so, I really liked it because I was able to take my time and develop my own philosophies without, having to answer to other people. JT, in fact, when I first started there one day, I went to Coach Curtis and I said, "Hey, Coach, it'd really be neat if you'd come into the weight room and watch what we're doing." And he was like, "Son, if I have to do that, I hired the wrong person." Oh no. So I, I was really patient, and I got some opportunities early on in my time there where some small schools, contacted me and asked, if I wanted to interview for the job. And I respectfully declined it because I knew that I had a lot of work to do to become the coach that I wanted to be. And so I kept studying and reading all the text and watching videos and going to conferences. And then there was a job that opened up at Middle Tennessee State University, and it was close to home, because I'm from Nashville, and Middle Tennessee is just an hour from my house. And so I really went after that job hard. And and that was the first time that I'd ever gone through the process of getting people to call for you and, all that networking and stuff. And at the time, I was probably 25 or 26 years old, so I was kind of like feeling my way out. So I went after that job hard, and it was between me and a guy that I knew that played football there. And so he eventually got the job, and in fact, he is still the strength coach there today.
Wow!
So they hired the right guy, because I would have moved on. So I went after that one hard and didn't get it. So then I took another year or two to continue working and trying to learn as much as I could. And then there was a guy that was recruiting John Curtis. His name was Randy Sanders, and Coach Sanders was, at the time, I think he was the running back coach at the University of Tennessee.
Okay.
Or he played quarterback at Tennessee. He's from the state of Tennessee, and he was in town recruiting our players. And so he and I were watching film one day, and he said, "You ever thought about coaching in college?" And I said, "Yeah, that's ultimately my goal." And he goes, "Well, if you ever want to think about the University of Tennessee, give me a shout. I think I could probably pull some strings for you."
You start shouting right there. Like,
Hey.
No, I tried to be cool about it,
You're like,
nah, I think I'm all right. And so that was during the season. So I went to a conference over Christmas break or something in Atlanta, and I met the head strength coach that was there. And so he and I talked a little bit, and then, I guess it was right after Christmas, he left. In fact, his name was Bruno Pauletta, and he owned a company. Y'all may have heard of Power Systems. It's a catalog that sells all types of training equipment. So he left the university and went to work full time with this side business that he'd been working on forever. And so they hired a friend of, they hired a guy named John Stuckey that I had met before at conferences. So I just started calling Coach Stuckey then. Yeah, it was on.
It was on.
And
it was time.
So we went through the spring, and during the summer, I got a phone call from Randy and said, "Hey, we have an assistant coach that might be leaving. I think this is a great opportunity for you." And I was like, finally. So my oldest brother was getting married, and so my wife and I, we decided that we were going to go through Knoxville on the way back to New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And so we drove, this is a crazy story. So we drove to Nashville, went to the wedding, and then on the way back, we go through Knoxville, we get a hotel room, we spend the night, and I'm supposed to meet the head strength coach at 8 a.m. So we pull up, and my wife, she said, "Look, I'm going to drop you off here, and I'm just going to ride around Knoxville, go shopping and stuff like that. Whenever you're done, call me." So I said, okay. So me and Coach Stuckey, we talked forever, and before long, it was like 6 hours had passed. And
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Your wife probably was probably before cell phones.
She might have done some damage
like,
shopping for 6 hours. That's awesome.
She had a cell phone, so
Okay.
she had one. I did not. I had a pager. But she hadn't paged me or anything. So I was like, "Dang, man, this has gone a long time." So I called her. And, back then, if you put like 911 or 411, you had all these signals. So she didn't call me back. So I called her again and put the numbers in there to signal her to call me, and she didn't call me. So I just hung out in the weight room. So, about an hour later, my pager buzzes, and, so I went outside, and she was there. So I said, "Babe, what have you been doing?" She said, "I've been driving around Knoxville looking for a house to buy."
Oh, that's awesome.
Like, what?
It's like I found one.
I don't even have a job yet. She goes, "No, but they're going to hire you." I said, "Well, I'm glad you feel that way." So
That's confidence.
we got back in the car. We headed to New Orleans. And by the time we got to New Orleans, there was a message. You remember the old message machine?
Yes.
So
The message
we had
machine.
messages, and we played the message. And it was Coach Fulmer. He had called and offered me a job. So
I bet your wife was like, "I know which house we're getting."
He's like, "Here's our new address. Write it down."
So we had to sell the house, and they wanted me to come now. So we had a for sale sign, and we'd only had the house for like a year and a half, and we'd been remodeling the house forever. We'd just been doing it ourselves. So she said, "Whatever you do, don't put the for sale sign up. I want to come home tonight and clean it. And, I don't want, anyone to come in when the house is not clean." So I said, okay. So she got in her car and left. Like 2 minutes later, I was like, man, I'm putting the sign anyway. So I put the sign in, and this girl drives down the road, and she slammed the brakes on in front of the house, and she parked in her grass, and she got out, and she said, you're selling this house? And I said, yes, I am. And she goes, I've driven past it every day. I love it. Can I see it? And I was like, no, my wife says I can't let anyone in. And she goes, we're going to pay cash for it. And I said, come right in.
Yeah, come on. Doors are open.
So she made an offer that day, and we sold the house, and we moved to Knoxville.
That's amazing.
Wow, that is crazy.
So just a crazy story.
That's actually how I bought my first house. Not with cash, but it was after the hurricane.
Yeah.
And there were no houses in Baton Rouge, and I was driving down Capitol Heights, and there was a man with a for sale sign, put the car in reverse, drove, and I said, this doesn't look awesome, but I'll take it. Yep, take the for sale sign. This is my name. I'm going to have my realtor call you.
That's how it happened. And neat side story to that, about 3 years ago, we had a football player that came to LSU to play football. It was his mom who bought our house.
Wow.
He grew up in the house that Jill and I owned.
Oh, that's
a cool story.
That's really awesome. That's
a really cool story. Well, so, I mean, how long were you were at Tennessee for a while.
For 4 years.
Yep. Okay. And then you went to Miami after that. And then it brought you right back to LSU.
Yeah.
What brought you to Louisiana to begin with?
Yeah.
The job at John Curtis.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, crazy story. So, and everybody, especially young coaches, go through the process of applying for jobs and applying for jobs and applying for jobs.
Yeah.
I never got a job that I applied for. Every job that I ever got fell into my lap.
Yeah.
So when I was at Tennessee, we were playing Nebraska in the Orange Bowl, and I was sitting in the lobby, and this man comes in. He introduces himself, and he asks for my boss. Is Coach Stuckey here? And I said, well, he's in the staff meeting, and I'm waiting. Because back then, I didn't get to go into the staff meeting. I had to sit outside like a little kid. So I was sitting outside, and I said, they're in their meeting, and he should be out anytime. So he goes, you mind if I sit down? So we were sitting just like you and I are side by side, and he started talking to me, and he introduced himself as Larry Coker, and he said, I'm the offensive coordinator at the University of Miami. So I was like, great, and we shook hands, and we talked. About halfway through the conversation, he goes, hey, we just lost our strength coach, and I came over here to talk to John to see if he would recommend anyone. And I think I found our guy. Would you be interested in
the
head coaching job at the University of Miami? I was like, yeah.
Sure.
So the next day we drove over, and I interviewed, and I got the job.
That's awesome.
Wow, so cool.
Yeah.
So 2 years later, we're playing in the Gator Bowl. We're playing Georgia Tech, and they paid the coaches because we were playing in Jacksonville, so it's not far from Miami to Jacksonville. So they paid the coaching staff to drive. They gave us mileage and stuff and all this money to drive up there. Or you could ride on the bus, and we needed the money. So I said, we're driving, babe. So we're driving, and my mother-in-law calls and said, LSU just hired a new strength coach. Just hired a new football coach. His name is Nick Saban. And maybe they'll call Tommy and offer him a job. And so I was like, tell your mom that's not happening, okay? They got a new strength coach, and, he's only been there like 9 months. And so that night we get in the hotel, and we're sitting there, and my wife's phone starts ringing. And so I was like, who's that? And she goes, it looks like it's my mom. So she answers the phone. She goes, I just got off the phone with Pete Jenkins. He was a former coach at LSU when I was coaching high school ball. And Nick Saban just hired him, and they called and asked me for your number because Pete had recruited my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law played at Tennessee, but Pete had recruited my brother-in-law when he played at Rommel. So somebody recommended me for the job at LSU, and they called my mother-in-law, got my wife's cell phone number.
Oh my gosh.
That's never going to happen.
I bet your mother-in-law was like, yes.
It's totally happening.
Yeah, so she said, they're going to call you right now. And so I got so nervous. I was shaking because I wanted to coach at LSU. And so like 5 minutes later, Nick Saban calls, and I was sitting there, in a hotel room.
How awesome. So had y'all had kids at this point?
Yeah, we had two. So we had Clay, our oldest son, was born in Knoxville, and Aaron was just a baby. He was just like a few months old. And so we were sitting there with the 2 kids in the hotel room.
Yeah.
Oh my! I bet
So
your
I
mother-in-law
talked to
was
Nick
like,
saying-
"Get them home."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Nick offered me the job, and so that's how I ended up
awesome.
here. Yeah,
Wow.
crazy story.
Crazy
That is
story.
fantastic. So what led you to strength and conditioning? Because it's a very specialized type of coach.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who grow up playing sports gravitate to the X's and O's types of coaching. But
Yeah.
then you know, so what led you to say, this is my calling, this is my thing?
So one of the things that I've been working on is kind of like the Moffitt Method family tree.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it looks like an organizational chart, but it's all of the major influences in myself and my business partner, Matt Bruce's career. And so the first thing would have been the early Moffitt family influence of having older brothers that played sports. And my dad was a mechanical engineer, and so he built us like exercise equipment for our basement. And so
That's cool.
you know, we had lat pull down stuff, we had dip bars, we had benches. He even made me a barbell.
Wow.
So
cool.
yeah, so
That's really cool.
yeah, so if I wanted something, he made me a curl bar, the crooked curl bar. He made all of that type of stuff. So I just grew up around weights.
Yeah.
And other early influences, like, believe it or not, the comic book workouts in the back where you could get the Charles Atlas workout for 5 cents.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
And stuff like that, you know, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was young and just started, you know, his career. So it was all types of goofy stuff like that. And there was a bookstore. One of the first books that I ever bought was a book on weightlifting, the sport of weightlifting. I still have it. The copyright was like 1969 or 1970.
It's
Yeah.
just like always been a part of your life.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
Yeah,
always been a
always.
part. And so the earliest influence that I could like put my finger on was just having big brothers that lifted weights.
And just wanted it's just part of your
yeah,
life, it's part of your
yeah.
culture.
And then I had a junior high school football coach and who made us lift weights as a junior high football player. And this is like 1976.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my collegiate strength coach was the guy who put me over the edge, Jack Williamson. In fact, so part of the Moffitt Method family tree is I talked to him last week, and he gave me a list of all of his influences and the men that influenced him. And
That's
it
really
was
cool.
That's really cool.
his high school. He had a high school PE teacher that got him involved in weightlifting. And
Yeah.
so
Changed his life.
just like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so my strength coach made me want to be a strength coach. It was the enthusiasm and the passion and the love that he had for what he did. I just said, hey, whatever it is that he does, I want to do it.
yeah. What is that? I'm going to
yeah.
write that down.
That's how it happened. It was easy.
That's
really
awesome. Cool.
Well, looking back, I mean, you have really big things coming ahead, but looking back at like some key coaching moments, like what were some of the like key moments that stand out to you in your mind over your career?
That's a hard one.
Yeah. You know, it's probably it's probably a combination of a lot of little things that just built up over time. And probably, I can remember. So before we had a strength coach at Tennessee Tech, we just had a weight room, and the football coaches would open the weight room up for us to go in there.
And you just do kind of.
And we would do whatever we wanted to do. And I would stay in there for like hours. And then we had this dungeon across the street. It was we had our physical education, because I was a PE major. Our physical education building had a basement, and it had a weight room in there. And they must have been like classrooms or old locker rooms, but there were these rooms that were kind of adjacent to each other. And they had the stereotypical light bulb hanging on a wire.
Oh, yeah. Like creepy cellar kind of
Yeah, creepy cellar type stuff. And there was just weights in there. And so they would kick us out of the weight room in the stadium, and then me and a couple of guys on our team would go down to the
dungeon,
to the old gym weight room and just work out. And it was, that right there, and knowing that there were other people who were not doing it. And I said that if I keep doing this, then someday I'm going to be successful.
Yeah.
And so I just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And ultimately I became successful. And I can remember there was a day, me and my strength coach, because he had to teach classes, and then he doubled as our equipment manager.
Wow, that's a heavy load.
Yeah, and back then, that's the way it was.
Yeah.
You
taught and you practiced, and then you
had a lot of responsibilities. And so he and I were the only two people in the weight room, and our weight room was on the second floor above our coach's offices, and we were looking out the window. And he goes, so what are you going to do when you graduate? And I said, I'm going to take your job. And he laughed like y'all did. He's like, get out of here, kid. And I was like, no, this is going to be my weight room someday, and I'm going to take your job. And he's like, I said, get out of here, kid. And, and he whacked me upside the head, but I knew that it was what I wanted to do. And so it was just, I think, probably, like I said, a culmination of all these little bitty things that just continued to snowball and
led you where you are.
Yeah.
Was there ever like an athlete or a team where you felt the most connected to or saw the most growth in, where that was like that rewarding? Because you have a unique, as a strength coach, you have kind of a unique perspective on, you're dealing with clay in a little bit, and you're building it and molding it, and someone else gets to like plug it in, but you're the one that has to build the machine. And like sometimes these were the expected results. These were better than we expected. Like I'm sure you've had moments where you're like, wow.
Yeah. So when I left John Curtis, so there's a tradition at Curtis that the seniors on the last day of training camp, Coach Curtis would make them jog around the field, and all of the team would line up, kind of like a soccer mom.
Like a tunnel.
Yeah. Tunnel. And you would run through that tunnel and then go into the locker room. So
that's cute.
We were in training camp at Curtis when Tennessee had offered me the job. And so I told Coach Curtis, I said, I'm going to finish training camp, and then I'm going to leave to go to Knoxville. And so I didn't know he was going to make me do it, but the last day of practice, he made me jog around the field.
I love that.
And even when I talk about it to this day, I kind of get kind of emotional about it because, I'm jogging around the field, and then when I go through the soccer mom tunnel, all the guys start smacking me on the back and punching me in the arms and stuff. And I went into the locker room, and I was overcome with emotion, and I ran to where the weight room was, and the only thing that was left in there was my backpack. And I grabbed my backpack, and I ran and got in my car, and I cried the whole way home. And I said that I will never, ever, ever work with such a wonderful group of people and young men ever again.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of had that relationship with those guys at Curtis. And then so when I got to Tennessee, the first couple of days were rough, new guy on the block. And I had a pair of Reebok shoes at the time. And I went to the equipment room to get me a pair because they were wearing Nike at the time. And I went and I said, hey, somebody told me I had to come here and get shoes. And the guy goes, I'm not here for the strength coaches. I'm here for the players. Get out of it. So I left. And then Knoxville's kind of cool in the morning. So I had a Tennessee jacket. I had the starter jacket. I don't know if y'all remember starter jackets.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're too young.
They were like the coolest thing.
So I had this Tennessee.
Google that later.
Yeah, this orange and white starter jacket. So it was cool that morning. So I put it on, and I'm walking down to the practice field, and Coach Fulmer goes, hey, Tommy, we're a Nike school. You can't wear that. So, don't come out here with it again. I was like, yes, sir. So I went to the equipment room, and I said, hey, Coach Fulmer says I got to get a jacket. You don't need a jacket. Get out of here. So,
oh, my gosh.
Yes, first couple of days were rough, man. So,
oh, my goodness.
So, I started picking up some momentum, and things started going well. And So I got the job when Peyton Manning was a freshman, and the program had been kind of down.
Yeah.
And, it just got, the longer I was there, the more responsibility that I got. And so by the time I left, it was just like the Curtis job. I said to myself, I will never, ever, ever have another opportunity to coach such fine young men ever in my life. And so I go to Miami, and, everybody knows, the reputation that the Miami football team has, and, the U and all the swag. And so I guess you could say I was kind of cautiously optimistic about this opportunity. And after about 2 weeks on the job, it was rough. And so I was the university put me up in a condo that is in Coconut Grove. That's an area between, say, Coral Gables and South Beach. And across the street was like a marina, and it was the Miami Bay, or the Bay of Miami, from the condo. And so we'd gone through some pre-testing. And the guys so we'd just played in the Orange Bowl, and we had some really good players.
Yeah.
There was probably 8 or 9 guys off of that team that got drafted that year. And so I took this job at Miami, and we did that testing, and it was so bad that I went that afternoon. It was a Friday afternoon, and I went and sat down on the edge of the marina. And I contemplated just like falling off into the water and sinking to the bottom of the ocean.
Oh, God.
Oh my God, that's
It
terrible.
was bad, terrible.
Oh,
I
God.
was like, what have I got myself into? And just like Tennessee, I just kept working and just kept working. And, again, when I left Miami, I was like, I'll never, ever coach. So there wasn't.
Yeah.
To make a long story short, I think every opportunity that you have, no matter what your job is, no matter where you're working, who your boss is, it is what you make it.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's a great point.
And so I feel the same, or have felt the same, about every team that I ever coached. I'm, winning the national championship in 2003 was spectacular.
Yeah.
But winning it in the Superdome, I had won 3 state championships in the Superdome as a high school coach. And we beat the number 1 ranked team in the country, Archbishop Shaw. When I was coaching at Curtis, they were like a 20-point favorite, and we scored 40-something points against Archbishop Shaw, and they were the number 1 ranked team in the country. And so
That's amazing.
That's impressive.
yeah, but all of those spectacular wins to me didn't feel any different than, beating Archbishop Shaw.
Yeah.
Because, when at the time when I was a high school coach and we won a state championship, in my mind, that was the most unbelievable experience that you would ever have, because of all the passion and all the effort and all the work that you put into, winning.
With the kids that you get.
Yeah, and it's just a different
Yeah.
mindset. It's the kids that you get.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like these kids, this is like most of them get 4 years and they're not going to move on to college.
Right.
But this is the clay that you have to like mold into an awesome team.
Yeah.
And I remember when Archbishop Shaw was like dominating football.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, they're from our state? How is that possible?
Yeah. So, it's every opportunity you get. I think if you pour enough of, effort into it, you're going to be successful. And to me, and I say it, I don't think there's ever been anyone as blessed as I have been in my career.
Yeah. You
You have quite the amazing
worked
career.
with some of the top names, both in the athlete realm and in the school realm and in the coaching realm that exists today in the sport of football, where one of those names people go, wow. And you're like, well, I got a few more. And then it's like,
Yeah,
wow.
incredibly blessed. And so every team I think that I ever coached, I felt the same about it. And
I think that's the mark of a really good coach, though, right?
Yeah.
It's like you like them all and you bond with them and give them your best effort.
All right. Well, so that's amazing. So from that, you've been coaching for a long time, but now you're moving on to the Moffitt Method. So can you tell us a little bit that?
Yeah. So I don't even know where to start. You know,
you can tell us as much or as little as you want. I mean, like, don't give away the secret sauce, but you can like.
So during COVID, I didn't know if we were ever going to coach again.
Yeah.
You know? I don't think anyone.
No one knew anything. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
some dark times for people who do
yeah.
jobs like that where you're like, is this ever going to come back?
We were at work one day and they told us to leave. And so I told our staff, I said, the world as we once knew it has changed. And, you know, it's going to be different. And so, you know, they told us they didn't know when we were going to come back. Yeah. And we had to clean out our offices and, you know, they says you can't contact the players, you can't do this, you can't do that. So
that's rough.
Me and my son, my oldest son, Clay, were just sitting around and there was an app that someone had told him about. It was called Cornerstone Gun Dog Academy. And it's an app that you use to train retrievers, hunting dogs with. And so he and I sat down. He had a password to it, so he and I sat down. And then we actually met a gentleman who had shot some of the photography and shot some of the videos for that app. And we sat down and, you know, talked about building something similar to that for athletes. But I didn't think it could be done that way, the way the Gun Dog Academy was, because there were daily lessons, and for every daily lesson you had to have a different video. So the number of videos would have been astronomical.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we would have shot videos for an entire year. But it's kind of set into motion me thinking about what I would do if I couldn't coach again.
Yeah.
And at the time, people were building home gyms.
Oh, yeah.
They were going out of style.
Because people need to exercise more than ever.
Right.
Well, and that was the amount of
to,
people that started working out with people in their neighborhood, going to, you know, to someone's garage or whatever.
Well, news was telling you the only way to really know that you might get through COVID is to be healthy. So everyone's like, I got to get healthy.
I mean, that's how our company even started, was that.
Well, same thing. We used to put on running events. And we got back from putting on a race in Florida on was a Sunday night, and then Friday the world is shut down, and we were like, on Wednesday we're like, this is not going to happen. On Thursday we're like, what if this happens? On Friday it was like,
go home.
This company we have spent 8 years building may be over, like, after all that work. And it was like, what do you do now? We're going to exercise. But like, what else do you do? And you have to sort of pivot and think, like, what do I love, and can I adapt that? And it sounds like you did a great job of that.
That's exactly what we did. So I took a notebook, and at the time, we named it, at the time, it was called Kratos. And Kratos is like the god of war. And that was my two sons, Aaron and Clay, came up with that. And they started, you know, drawing logos. And so I had a notebook, and at the top it said Kratos Sports Performance. So every day I'd spend, you know, an hour or two just jotting stuff down. And then, you know, they told us that we could go back to work, and I folded the book up and sat it down, because it was like it was like running a marathon and then stopping at mile 13.
Yeah.
And then they say, okay, we're all starting back at mile 13. And we just took off sprinting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
still trying to have a PR. Go.
So the book just sat there for over a year. And then, you know, when things started going, you know, wrong in 2021, I picked the book back up, because I had a pretty good inclination that we were all going to get fired. And I didn't know, you know, I kind of had a bad taste in my mouth. So I didn't know if I was ever going to coach again. So I just picked up the book and started going through all of my notes, and And that's when I realized again that having an app would be good, but instead of training individuals and just selling like a training template, I thought our best option was to do remote coaching and try to target middle schools, high schools, small colleges, and sport organizations.
Yep.
That I thought that would be a better market than relying on, 12 to 14-year-olds.
Yep.
Early developmental stage. We're going to focus on that, but the original was going to be primarily the early developmental stage of physical training. And so we wanted to be more aggressive and approach the high schools and stuff. So one day I saw an advertisement on Twitter or Instagram that Gordy Rush had put out about starting a podcast. So I said, if I'm going to start a business, I should probably start with a podcast first and build an audience. So I called Gordy up, and Gordy and I met about it. We started meeting him more and more and more, and
he's like a wealth of knowledge and like people
he's great too.
Gordy's a sharp guys, and then they have a great team of people. And it's not just Guarantee Media; it's GatorWorks and the whole group of people. And it just started growing and growing and growing and growing. And, we've talked about this a lot, you and us.
Yeah.
One of the, we had to have a platform, a deliverable.
Yep.
And so I started looking at all the different companies, and it was cumbersome. And I was trying to figure out which platform I was going to use to deliver my product.
Yep.
And I knew that Matt Bruce had experience with it. And even in some of my preliminary meetings with a Guarantee and GatorWorks, I had referenced Matt's company, Brute Strength, and their website, and how I liked their website. So one day I picked up the phone and I called Matt, and I said, hey, Matt, you got a minute? I'd like to talk to you about how you deliver your product with Brute Strength. And he said, sure, Coach, come on over. And so I drove over to Catholic High, and I was sitting there, Matt and I, and we were sitting on a workout bench, a weight bench, and he was ripping through the software. And I was like, holy mackerel. And I was thinking to myself, I will never be able to do that. It's going to take me years
to learn that,
to learn this. And I'm watching him do it, and he's going from folder to folder, and he's just ripping it. And I was like, and I said, I will never be able to do this. And Matt said, I can help you, Coach. And I said, how much are you willing to help me? And then he said, why don't you and I just become partners?
Yeah.
And I shook his hand.
Perfect.
We shook hands right there on the spot.
Perfect. Yeah.
And so
because that's something you both need. He needs you.
Right.
You need
A yin
him.
and a yang. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we spun right there on the spot. And so that is, and we hadn't named it. So the name, well, there was still a name. It was called Kratos.
Yeah.
That was still the name. And Matt did not like Kratos. He goes, we need to call it the Moffitt Method. And I didn't like it. And so we met. The first time Matt and I met, they said, oh, okay, this name. I don't think anybody kind of liked the name, but me and my two sons,
Kratos.
or three sons.
For reference, when we decided to build a training app, Kratos was on our list. We really liked it. Yeah. I don't know why other people didn't like it.
Think about Greek gods. I mean, it's a good one.
We had a whole list of Greek gods, and that one we were like, it was already taken though.
Yeah, so that's the thing about it. When we started looking at Kratos, because not me, but when GatorWorks started looking at it, there's Kratos equipment, Kratos training. There's a lot of Kratos.
And it's hard to stand out and like to create a brand that doesn't somehow copyright issues, trademark issues.
And SEO.
Yeah.
So
gets ugly.
Right. So they were like, and Matt goes, I think Moffitt Method would be a good name, and everybody's like, yeah, it's the Moffitt Method. So
and
that's
your career is so impressive. Like, I mean, tying your name with that, making it a brand is just genius.
It's smart. I
Yeah.
mean, like if you have a name that has a reputation like yours does, using it, you can trademark it because no one else can claim that.
That's what everybody said. So here we are.
Nobody else can claim
So
that.
yeah, so we so we're close. I mean, we're so close to
rolling it out?
Yeah, to rolling it out. We're still working. So we have beta. We have some beta projects going on. People using the product in
That's
football
awesome.
and basketball.
Yeah.
And we're constantly So we have 2 coaches. We have a young man by the name of Mike Davis and James Stampley. A lot of people will probably know James. James played football at LSU. They're both finishing up their doctorate at LSU in exercise phys.
That's
so
awesome.
they are 2 very bright young minds.
It's fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so and it's important, and one of the reasons why I think we have been so successful at LSU and in strength and conditioning is because I always tried to hire people that were smarter than I was.
Yeah.
And people that were different than me.
Yeah.
If everyone that I hired was just like me, then we would be so one-dimensional that it would have been terrible.
You want to
Yeah.
diversify the intellectual
You wanna
pool.
build- and
Exactly.
growth.
And the talent
I mean,
pool.
growth comes from different ideas and different
Yeah,
mindsets.
that's why Nellie and I are good business partners.
Yeah.
We have polar opposite strengths and weaknesses, which
Oh
is
my
a
gosh,
good balance.
completely.
We're like a whole person when you put us together.
Exactly. So
Otherwise, there's like half a human.
So we have, so it's now the company's gotten big. So it's bigger than I ever thought it would be. So it's Matt, myself, a gentleman by the name of Rob Muse. Rob is our resident Canadian. So he works remotely, but has a lot of online experience. He's worked for Apple. Brilliant. He's our COO. Brilliant mind. And then we have James and Mike Davis. So we're getting very close. The website is getting very close to being finished. All the artwork and all of that stuff is complete. And I don't.
awesome. That's the exciting stuff. I love the logo and the branding.
Yeah.
And they've shown us the wireframes, they're called, and so we've seen bits and pieces of the website, and I mean it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And so again, Mike and I and James and Matt, we keep going over the programming because that's going to be important. You can have the nicest website and you can have a great staff of people. But if your deliverable isn't on point, then you're in trouble.
Yeah,
so
your
Yeah,
attention.
yeah, because we all fall for the brand one time, right?
Yeah.
If the product isn't good, we don't
That's
go back.
right.
But you're in good hands at Gatorworks.
yeah, so
There's some
we're
great
yeah,
people.
yeah, they are. They've been phenomenal, and so
very smart people.
So we're just just trudging along.
Yeah.
And I spend I don't know 4 or 5 hours a day sitting at the computer just going over stuff and over and over and over and
Just thinking it all through.
yeah. I bought a book, the podcast journal.
Yeah.
Did y'all see that?
Yeah.
So I'm going through the podcast journal daily and waiting on my equipment for the podcast. And I don't know how that's going to go, but
It'll grow great.
Yeah.
The easiest thing with the podcast is just have conversations with people.
Yeah.
You just tell people what you know or ask them what they know.
Right.
And
then
yeah,
it
once
just-
it's all up and running, we'll share on our page on this. So everyone listening will, whenever it's all ready for launch, we'll post.
Yeah.
So you can go learn more about the Moffitt method.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and when you're scheduling, it's kind of like, when a young insurance salesman or a young financial advisor, you schedule all your friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So-
yeah. Who do we know that would
Yeah.
want to be on our podcast?
I'll find out who my friends are quick.
Yeah.
But in fact, when I speak to someone, every time I talk to them, after we're done, I say, "Hey, you want to be on my podcast?"
Us too.
Oh, yeah, us
Same.
too. Same.
We do a lot of research. And I mean, that's what we asked you, right? We talked to you, we're like, hey, you want to be on our podcast? Because you think about who your audience is, what your objectives are, and then who would be a good contributor to what it is that you're talking about to diversify the content. Because when we started, Nellie and I, we have a lot where we just interview each other or talk about topics, but then we're like, I mean, we should probably have some other people on here. And but we had never practiced it, you know, like I enjoy talking on camera and in a microphone. I don't know if anyone can tell, and Nellie was really nervous about it, but we didn't practice. We were like, we're just going to turn the mics on. This is the topic. We wrote it on the whiteboard, record, and it went well. You know, I was like, if it doesn't go well, then we don't have to do this.
Yeah. Well, and being in the Baton Rouge, you know, with LSU and people like you that are in the community, it's like, I mean, how could we not like interview some really
people
cool
have great
people?
stories, and I think it's just being in the art of storytelling within a topic, which is strength conditioning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
that's her skill again. That's where we don't
what?
line up. The storytelling is all her. I'm like, yeah, okay.
I can tell a story. I keep telling my husband I'm going to write a short story. We have a lawnmower, and like one of the wheels broke, so he ordered another one, but he ordered the wrong size, so it's like a little tiny wheel on the lawnmower, but still works. I'm like, that would make a great short story of like the little wheel on the lawnmower.
Yeah.
The little wheel that could.
Right? I have too many other things to do. So I would like to ask you, so like this new project that you're working on is like taking your knowledge that you have gained through experience at like a much higher level and drilling it down into the younger people, right? And so you raised 2 kids who went on to play collegiate sports. You have another son that plays football. And I know that that's just something that a lot of parents think about is like, you know, my kid likes sports. How do I help them? What's the right time for them to start working on that bigger, faster, stronger mindset? Any tips and advice that you have for them? Because you can Google things and the world is full of bad information. And as parents, we don't necessarily know where the good information is.
Yeah, so that's one thing that keeps me awake at night. Making sure that our project is scalable enough for young men and young women. That's something that's very important to me because I have children, you know, and I wouldn't do anything for your child that I wouldn't do for my own. And so that's, again, the one thing that keeps me up at night. And so here's how I look at it. And it's the way I've always looked at it, because everyone says that you shouldn't start weight training until you reach puberty.
Right.
And that's
kind of the golden rule, I guess.
That's the golden rule. But in my mind and in my opinion, you're limiting your child's growth tremendously by adopting that philosophy. And the best example I can give you 1,000 examples, but I'm going to give you an easy one. If your child came to you and says, Mom, Dad, I want to play baseball. There are so many baseball leagues for young boys and softball leagues and for young women that you wouldn't wait. If you waited until your child was 14 years old before you started playing a sport,
they wouldn't be very good.
They're going to lose out every opportunity that they would ever have to compete and to have fun. I can remember going to the Y and playing T-ball. And, you know, and my son's T-ball experience started like everyone's. He hit the ball and then he just took off running straight ahead.
Yeah.
But he was out there playing, you know, we had Capri Suns when it was over and all of that stuff. Well, in my mind, that is how I wanted my boys' experience to be with a barbell. And I've told this story 1,000 times, and you can ask my wife if you don't believe me, but I went to Academy. I guess it was Academy. I don't know where it was, but I bought some like 3 and 4 and 5 pound dumbbells, and I found these little bitty barbells that weighed like 7 pounds. And I brought them home and I put them under Clay's bed, my oldest son's bed. And Clay at the time was probably 6 or 7 years old. And my wife was like, what in the world are you doing? And I said, I bought the boys some weights. And she goes, but they're too young. And what are you going to do? And I was like, honey, I'm putting them under the bed. And he doesn't even know they're there. But one of these days, he's going to pull them out and he's going to pick them up and he's going to start playing with them.
Yeah.
And that's that's how I didn't want strength and conditioning or athletics for that matter to be something that my boys felt like they had to do.
Like a burden. Yeah.
I wanted it to be something that they felt like they could do and wanted to do because it was fun and it was play. And I have a picture, Clay. So we moved out of, so we've had 2 houses here. We moved from one house in 2004. So Clay was probably 6 years old at the time. And he's standing in the garage, him and Aaron, and he's holding this little bitty 10-pound barbell over his head. And they had gone and they'd come out with some swimming, because they swam a lot. So they had like ribbons. They had these blue ribbons red ribbons. And they had a little trophy. I don't know what it was from. It could have been from the Pinewood Derby racing with Cub Scouts.
Yeah.
But they had gone into the house and found ribbons and trophies, and they were having a weightlifting meet
That's
in
awesome.
the garage.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic.
And I snapped a picture of them. And so it became play. And, well, just like swimming. I mean, my boys probably started swimming at the Y and at the summer swim leagues when they were 7 or 8 years old. And so to me, that's how you should begin training for young men and young women.
Make it fun.
Make it fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not pressure. Because I know when I was in school, I think it was not until high school, but you had to go to weightlifting. And like as a girl, that just sounded terrible.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I gotta go to summer weightlifting. And I hated it.
Right.
And I think if someone had approached it differently, and if they'd explained the direct correlation between if you do these box jumps, when you shoot the basketball, better things are going to happen. It was just like, you have to do X amount of these. And it was like, I don't want to do that. So I never put much effort into the weightlifting. Never.
Yeah. So that's how we did it. And, I bought weights, and as they got stronger, I bought more weights. I bought bigger weights, and they just grew up playing with the barbell. And so, and for the oldest two, but that is still a part of their life still today. And so, Clay is a financial advisor at Altus, but he gets up in the morning and goes to Traction and trains a group of, he has a group of minor league baseball players and NFL football players, and then in the afternoon he has a group of high school baseball players that he trains. And Aaron does it. Aaron gets up every morning, and he gets up before I do, but he's at a young man's house at 6 a.m. in the morning training a young man that has a home gym, and then he goes to his full-time job, and then when he gets off work, he goes to Catholic High and coaches at Catholic High. And athletics, and I think it's because of the path that we took, athletics is a major part of their life. Although they have full-time jobs completely out of the industry, it's still to this day a part of a major part of their life.
Well, and they probably think it's fun. If they're doing it outside of their full-time job,
well,
they think it's
a passion.
It's a passion. Yeah.
Like my kids play sports, and before I had kids and before they played sports, I forgot that I really liked sports. It's just like that phase is done. And now that my kids are all in on all the sports, like, I can't wait. They're having a baseball tournament next weekend. I'm like, oh, how many days of the baseball tournament? It's just fun to watch them play and learn and try and fail and succeed and just be with their teammates. And just like last week, I was driving some home from a football game, right? So like we wait at the locker room for a long time, drive home, everybody's hungry and tired. Just listening to him and a kid that lives in our neighborhood just talk about the shenanigans that were going on in the locker room, on the bus, it made my heart so full, because it was like, those are the memories that I have from playing sports. And like now my kids are making them, and it's like, I know that like that's not all there is in life, but like in our life, that's a big part of life, and it brings so much joy, and that's cool that like your family has done all that and your kids are still doing it, even though they have like day jobs. It's like, this is part of our fabric of who we are, and we're going to keep
part of the Moffitt family tree.
Yeah.
That's right.
We're going to keep
the same influences that I had they've had.
Yeah.
So it's 2 generations now.
And you just keep adding more limbs to the tree and more stories, right?
Here's something that's really neat. I'm a high school friend of mine started a group text among all of our buddies from 1981. It's called the class of 1981. And it's probably, I guess there's 10 or 12 of us. And we sit and text every day stories about junior high school, some college. But it's all like high school stories about so-and-so. Do you remember when so-and-so forgot his football pants? Or do you remember when coach made us, run to the practice field instead of take the bus? And it's just, it's a part of the fabric of your life that is going to be there forever.
Yeah, and the relationships you make, like the friends you make.
You keep them forever.
My high school cross country team, I mean, we still are, when everyone's in town during the summers or whatever, we still go out and do our high school run route around the lakes.
Yeah,
I mean, it's been 10 years. And
that stays with you. It's a lot of fun. So we're wrapping up a little here because we've been at this almost an hour now. We don't want to keep you too long. But do you have any advice for young athletes? Because I know, especially in that middle school age where they're growing at different sizes and some are getting faster, some are getting slower, and like any advice for those guys who are trying to find their identity through sports on some level?
Tell your coach to buy the Moffitt Method.
Solid advice.
No. First of all, and this is something that I've learned over and over and over again. You can't judge yourself.
Yeah.
You just have to work. And a lot of times people will look at themselves in the mirror and say, I'm just not big enough, or I'm just not fast enough, or I'm not strong enough, or I'm not smart enough. You can't do that. You have to just, put in the work that, your coaches and your parents or your big brother or somebody tells you. Just work. That's the best piece of advice.
Do the work.
Yeah.
Be hungry and be humble, right?
Yeah. And then eat well.
Yes. Amen to that.
You have to eat well. There's, they call it fast food for a reason, man. It doesn't take very long to prepare it, and it's not that good for you. And you're never going to reach the goals that you set for yourself by eating fast food. Yeah. It's not going to happen. So,
hear that, everybody? Write that down.
Yes.
We talk about that a lot on our podcast, but coming from Tommy Moffitt, everybody,
you can't.
You don't listen to me, listen to him. It's true.
Yeah, it's true. You can't out-train a bad diet.
You cannot.
No.
It doesn't matter.
No, it's like a machine, right?
Yeah.
So I was having this exact conversation with my 7th grader who was saying something about he wanted to eat a ton of cheeseburgers or something, him and his friend. And I was like, guys, let me explain this to you. Your body is going to exert all the energy that you have. Half of it is going to be trying to decide what to do with that food as opposed to fueling you into the game, right? Because it's processed food and your body doesn't know how to process it. So it's burning what could be game energy processing this fast food. And they did not want to hear this. And so I was like, well, you think about it and we'll talk about it again next week.
What goes in, what comes out.
Input, output, right?
Crud goes
input,
in,
output.
crud's going to be what you output.
Yeah, we definitely preach that a lot, both on our podcast and just with all the athletes we work with, is you've got to feed yourself the right kind of food.
And we would spend countless hours lecturing our guys at LSU on this, and it goes in one ear and right out the other.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, we have both in our own personal athletic journeys and then working with other athletes is kind of asked yourself, give it 2 weeks to do it right.
Right.
And do a mental assessment every day of how well you feel.
Exactly.
I cleaned up I've always eaten a decent diet, but for a period of time when I was getting a nutrition certification, I was all deep in that. And I noticed instantly when I was running faster. I was recovering a lot quicker. I felt amazing. And I was like, I just been eating a lot of plants, And I was like, I know they say to do that, but it made a significant improvement in my ability.
So I track everything I do. So, I have a wearable and I track my sleep, I track the calories, my mileage, my speed, I track it all.
Yeah.
And I know based on how I eat, how well I'm going to ride the next day.
Yeah.
And I'll be eating something and I'll say to myself, this is going to cost me
Tomorrow, yeah.
But is it worth it? Sometimes the answer is yes.
And as soon as I get on the bike, I'm like, oh, and sometimes before, like I'll wake up in the morning and my knees are creaky and I know why my knees are creaky.
Yeah.
And so, if you, again, and I'll say it again, you cannot out-train a bad diet.
No.
And you just can't eat a lot of protein and a lot of carbs. You have to give enough effort to balance it all out, and eat carbs and proteins at different times of the day. I mean, you can get as intricate with it as you want.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And then the last thing is sleep.
That was
our podcast we recorded before
legitimately before you got here. Our other podcast, Natural Ways to Improve Your Sleep, and how important it is. Just cover this very topics. You heard it here, guys, from us and from
Tommy Moffitt. Yeah.
So your body gets stronger and you recover at night while you sleep.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And your body needs that.
Right.
Right. It needs that.
And the better you sleep, all of those hormones that everybody wants to inject into their body and stuff, all of those are present if you sleep.
Yep.
And if you eat all the right foods.
And you can't cheat sleep. Like the only thing to do is sleep.
Right.
Prioritize.
I mean,
sleep.
that's my favorite hobby, so I don't know why people be trying to cheat that. I'm like, last night I was putting my kids to bed, and my younger son, he says the funniest things. He's like, Mom, you know what my favorite time of day is? I was like, I don't know. He's like, bedtime. I was like, I high-fived him. I was like, me too, buddy. It's like the best.
Yeah. Jill calls me Sleeping Beauty because I love to sleep. And, coaching for so long, you kind of, sometimes you end up depriving yourself of sleep.
Getting up early.
And
You got
staying up late.
You got to catch up.
yeah. And so.
You still playing catch up?
No, I've caught up. But I didn't, and I've always wore some type of wearable that tracked it. But the difference in how I feel now and how clearly I am able to think now that I'm getting the right amount of sleep at night has been phenomenal.
And falling into that deep sleep for a steady amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah, your brain is not foggy.
And
anymore.
the better I sleep, the lower my body fat is.
Oh,
you heard that, everybody? Mm-hmm.
Is that on y'all's
100%.
list?
Not exactly.
We talked about
but
that in a podcast before about how eating healthy and making sure you sleep it's a combination. It's not just a one
for your
or the
mental
other.
health, your physical health, just how really critical it is, because we're in a world where it's that fast world, right? Which is why we make poor nutrition choices and why we make poor sleeping choices. So like our number one tip for sleeping, which could apply to everything, is like make sleep or yourself a priority. Like what do I need to feel better? Proper food, proper sleep.
Yeah.
For all people and especially young growing athletes. I think that's very important. Do we have any other topics you want to cover? Anything you want to add? Any questions you want to ask us?
No, I tell you, I'm envious of this studio here. I love it. I'm digging it.
Yeah, I mean,
to
I know that Barrett, and then we'll let you come in here
They'll let you
anytime.
do
If
it
you want
anytime.
even just do a test podcast.
My podcast studio is smaller than their cubicles. So, at first we're going to start with just audio only.
Yeah.
And our ultimate goal is to own a facility, a brick and mortar facility.
Yes.
And so we're waiting there. We're going to have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'm assuming y'all need that for sure.
We're
For all
going to
the
have to
videos.
have with all the exercises, and so we've shot countless videos of all the exercises, all the speed improvement drills. So we're going to have a YouTube channel, but we would also like to be able to interview clients and athletes that come to
Testimonials,
our
that'd be
facility.
great.
And so eventually,
that's a great idea.
so I'd started on the building the same time we started on the
digital
app.
side.
Yeah. And it was just too much.
Yeah.
And so I had to pump the brakes on that. And, I thought I can do one thing really good or do two things
Mediocre,
kind of average. And so the digital aspect of it is the most important part right now. And then once we have that up and running, then we're going to switch our focus to a physical structure, brick and mortar, and there's a couple places picked out, and so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
That's super
that'd be
cool.
cool.
I mean, he told us this last time we met with him, and I was like, I can't wait for that brick and mortar. I'm gonna come get some Moffitt Method swag.
Yeah. So wait, y'all to see
I'm gonna see
our
my
hats.
kids there.
Yeah. Oh, as a matter of fact, Jill loves her
hoodie.
Her hoodie
good.
and
So
swag.
comfortable. And it's about to be that
We're
kind
about
of
to
weather
get
where
some
you can
more.
wear it and
We're
be like,
gonna be doing more retail, so we'll have to pull some for Jill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're going to have merchandise, the hats. Hopefully, I get the ball caps. You know, every dude loves a ball cap. You know, so
Oh, yeah.
It's
the
free
ball caps are
advertising.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Because people wear hats all the time. I keep at least 4 hats in my car at all time for
Oh my
everyone
gosh.
in the family's heads.
How cool am I? Like, I go to her kids. Her kids are like my nephews, so I go to their sporting events. I'm gonna show up in my Moffitt Method hat and be like,
Yeah, the ball caps. All right, so the logo, so on a barbell, when you have like a 45, a 25, and
Yeah.
a 10,
Yeah,
it
the
kind of
3.
steps down. Well, it's so the way the logo is shaped, those are shaped like the letter M.
That's cool.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's 2 on each side, so it's Moffitt Method.
That's going to be cool.
And so the ball cap has one of those. So it's an M shaped like the end of a barbell.
Yeah.
And so
That's
we
so
had
cool.
2 designs, one with the logo in the center and one with the logo over on the side.
Which one did you pick?
We picked the one with the center. So
Yeah.
I asked a bunch of people. I sent them copies of it. And the majority said M in the center. But
yeah.
so the neat thing about it is I can always print them with the logo on the side.
And those that want it on the side, hey guys, we heard
Yeah.
you. Now we made one for
So
you.
yeah, we're doing the merch too. So that's been pretty cool
That's
to see
fun.
how all that goes.
That's so much
And
fun.
it'll be really cool when you start seeing people wear it. You know,
Yeah.
like people you don't know
Yeah.
that are part of your brand. Like that gets to be kind of cool and exciting.
Yeah, so it's just exciting times. you
Yeah.
know, for
Well,
all.
thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thank you for
It's
having
been
me.
an honor, meeting you. I think we met the first time over like a Zoom call, right?
Yeah.
I was in my classroom at LSU. And since then, we've had follow-up meetings, and now you came to be on our podcast, and it was great having you.
Super cool.
It was
So I
great
got to
to
have
have
y'all have to be on our podcast.
We would love to.
Yes, just tell us the time of the day. We're just,
Good.
whatever we're going to talk about, you got it.
Good, good. Well,
All right,
thanks
everyone.
for
Well,
having me.
thanks for tuning in for another wonderful episode of the Healthiest Happy Podcast. Does Nellie have another joke? Nellie
have a
tells
joke.
jokes in our podcast.
We end the podcast every time with the joke of the day.
I feel like there was one time we did it.
I know.
It was probably our worst podcast.
It probably was.
No one probably watched
This
it.
one isn't really a joke. It's more of a story. The other day, speaking of strength and conditioning, I was, doing my training regimen, and I went and hopped on the treadmill, and I got weird looks. So then I decided to jog on the treadmill instead.
That's pretty good. Yeah. More jokes coming at you in our next episode. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Healthy is Happy podcast. You can follow us on Facebook at Basic Living BR, Instagram for all things healthy and happy living at Basic Living BR, and for more nutrition-focused content, follow us on Instagram at @the_basic_eats.